Hi Ross, can you hear me okay? That's very funny. Let's see. Okay. Alright, I think you're good to go ahead and put the stream link in the Discord. I gotta turn down this menu sound, this is too loud. You know what? I'm just gonna turn it off for now. Right. Now I guess I wait. Alright. Pull up the chat. Hello there. Okay, we got 4 people watching. I'm gonna give everybody a little bit of time just to get in. Well, thank you. Thanks, Mike. This is the Project Platypus livery for the seasons of esports. Here, I will display this one, just show it off a little bit until we get some more people here. So, actually, that would be a good place to start. The scheme I've got going for Project Platypus stuff, you can see there's like, I start with just the initials, PP, and then I typically have like project names for all these, just to keep them organized, because for some reason, I don't know why the thumbnail doesn't show up. But, yeah, alright, we got 10 people watching now, so I'll go ahead and get started. Yeah. Alright, so today I'm going to start the first livery tutorial with, I'm going to make Zico's GTR for Tier 1. So whenever I make a design for someone, I always ask for any colors they'd like in specific. I'd ask for any shapes, or if they want it like sharp, or if they want it round in nature, if they have any specific sponsors they have in mind, or anything like that. And from that little info from Zico, he said he'd like it nice and lime green. So to start, I almost always make sure the paint is just a nice neutral color. The GCR is going to be a little bit different, just because you can tell that I usually start with black. Whenever you go through the different sections, you'll notice that the roof is not part of the body. So the GTR is going to be a little different. than, say, other designs, but that would actually give us some more freedom to work with what's on the top. So even though I did start with black paint on the entire car, I'm going to apply decal here. And we're going to zoom in, maybe get some, yeah, get a good angle. And I'm going to make it black. And if you can kind of see the difference in shade here. So even though you may put black paint as the base on the car, and it's not metallic, it's just a solid paint, you do the same for like a glossy decal, there is a difference. So whenever I start a design, I always just make a square decal as big as possible. I'm going to make it white just so that you can see it. Then I ramp the limit all the way up, ramp the depth all the way up, check the other side, just make sure it's covered everything. There's no clipping or anything. And then that's my base color. I never start with just the paint and leave it, because if you ever try to like patch anything up or trim it or anything like that, you're going to get a difference in shade. And that's just a personal nitpick I have. So I do that. This is how I start every livery. On the hood, you don't need to do the depth. You just need the limit, not the limit, the angle. Same for the mirrors. Pretty much every surface. And of course, this is assuming that you don't want to have a metallic or like a carbon undercoat. If you're doing that, then you don't need to do what I'm doing right now. But if you're not doing that, like, see, you can tell like down here is carbon, then just do what I'm doing in the sense of just make sure everything's covered. Make sure that windshield banner's on. And depending on the car, like sometimes I may want to like keep this carbon down here. Like, I just personally like it sometimes. I don't know if you can really tell, but here. Sometimes the carbon paint that you can select for a car, let's go with just carbon twill here. It's a different kind of carbon than what is on other surfaces. So if you compare these two, they're not exactly the same. There's a slight difference, but again, that's personal preference. And one last one here, and then we should be ready to go. So here's where we start. Our nice starting point. Did I? Whoops, I did. I don't know how that happened. All right, so with any car, I always try to start with where its natural curves are, and it's just its natural shape and all that. So I'm going to do this so you can see where I'm looking. On the hood here, you could start all the way from the front, like run backwards, but that's a pretty common design. The GCR is very easy to work with, luckily, because its side is very broad and rectangular. A few cars like the Citroen, or especially the Renault, I do not like working with the Renault. Its side is so curved, it's just not easy to work on. So cars like this give you a lot more freedom. And you also need to be careful. If you're working on, say, like the AMG 20, there are parts of the car, like on the AMG, I'd say like around here, that the 3D scan wasn't that great. So decals in that area will be a little muddled. So you need to be aware of that. And that does change per car. So I'm just going to add some branding on the banner. I do this on most cars. Sometimes I'll throw in like an LED board up at the top left or something if I'm feeling a little froggy, but usually I just stick with this as a start. That's where my little branding goes. As far as my favorites go, I have them organized in, this is LM Le Mans/DTM, but it kind of became just like a league thing or a category thing. So I have my like ALR number plates here, I have some WEC number plates, I have some IMSA number plates. So this is how I keep those organized, and some other just like generic sponsors that you'd see there. I've got a title sponsors list, and these are just more generic sponsors that I'll pull from and mix and match depending on the car. Then Hoonigan's just a personal favorite brand of mine. I use them a lot on Project Platypus designs, so I like to have this little section here. Project Platypus, these are decals that you'll see commonly on pretty much every Project Platypus design, or at least most of them. I don't use all of them. I've started to phase out a few of them, but this is my like go-to list just for consistency. VID, that stands for very important decals. These are shapes that I like to use a lot. I try to only keep like versatile, easily editable shapes here, generic ones. Like I use this one all the time just because you can get a good, that curve is really hard to replicate. I've used that one a lot. I've used this one a lot. This one is on this season's Project Platypus car, and this is the number plate I put on most cars now just for broad use. You can use them in ALR, you can use them online, wherever. And this is title sponsors 2 because I ran out of space in the first one, and I also just wanted some new fresh sponsors. So I try to get ones that are widely recognizable. Every now and then I will search specifically for ones if I'm trying to like, say like Williams. Williams uses specifically Atlassian, that kind of thing. And in my collection, I have a lot of pages, but this is kind of where I keep temporary decals. Like I just made one for the Jaguar for this Monday season. So I've got all my Jaguar decals here just for easy access if I don't feel like making an entire folder for it. This is like my temporary storage. I've also got some miscellaneous decals that I use in here that I may use one day, I may not use one day, I don't know. Just how I felt. Like there's some still Halloween stuff in here. Stuff that I just found like, that's a generic curve, but you can apply it for a lot of things, same as this. I try to look for abstract shapes because those are the ones you can manipulate the most. So I remember from my Project Platypus car this season, Zico asked for, he liked these dashed lines. Also, I'm going to turn up the music just a little bit so you're not just listening to the dulcet sounds of my voice. Can you even hear it? Maybe. We'll stick with that. Okay. But the green that he requested, let's see, specifically it was... Also, if you try to change the color here and you use the left stick and let go, sometimes it'll drag a little bit. Yep, just like that. I didn't do that drag. So that's a little frustrating. So you have to be very gentle with its inputs. Zico wanted a very bright lime green. 92, 100, 100 was what he used. I've made a similar design for him before, so this is nothing new for him. So to start off, I typically just pick a decal that I know I'm going to use as a theme over the car and just start messing around with it, see how it looks, see what angles could be good. Let's see, a good line to use on the GTR is right under that headlight, and I'll often like switch back and forth by pressing R3. Just it shows the angles and the lines on the car a lot better than if it's just black. So that always helps me out a lot. And also, since he didn't give me a sponsor either, that frees up a lot of design creativity because then I can go in a lot of different directions. So what if we just start there? I'm not totally happy with how it looks right over the wheel arch. So I'll check it with align to surface to see if that changes much of anything. In this case, it doesn't. So I don't think I'm going to keep that there. Now he said he wanted that dashed line, but maybe having it as the green dashed line isn't what would suit this best. Let's see, so how about we look at something like this? Well, that's not too bad. But then it kind of cuts off there at the back half of the car. Not really feeling that one. It may take a while to find a theme or a feel to the car that feels right. Don't worry about rushing it. You'll find it whenever you find it. I often go in with just an open mind. Whatever happens, happens. I don't really like to do replicas or anything like that. I try to let each design kind of happen organically. So if we, ooh, actually, all right. And sometimes, this is a great example of sometimes it's about the space that the decal doesn't take up. So here, I really like this black line right above the green. I think I'm going to keep this. Yeah, I'm going to hold on to this. But I'm not totally happy with how it comes up onto the arm here, and I'm not totally happy with how it looks here. But it's a good place to start. And I always increase the limit angle, because you never know, like, if you don't do that, you see bits like that little black line there, that you wouldn't see if you're from the side. So that's why you always check different camera angles, ramp up the limit angle. And before I get too committed to this design, I'm not going to duplicate it to the other side, just so that I can save myself some time, just in case I change my mind and I don't like it. So let's see. So I'm going to cover off this pillar here. A lot of the more intricate livery designs that I've done have a lot of this, like, I'm not sure what the right word would be, I guess trimming would be as close as I can get to what I would say this is or feels like. And that's a lot harder to do if your base is a metallic color, like my Project Platypus designs. I can't really trim that because I can't make the decals metallic in color if I wanted to trim some orange, for example. So I have to be very careful with how I place those decals. Since it's running over a little bit on the edge there, I'm going to shrink its length. You have to be very careful. I think that's good. Ramp up the angle again. I'm going to get a little bit of a higher angle for this inside piece. And whenever the decal disappears like that, that's a sizing issue. That's with depth. So I ramp up the depth a little bit, not too high, just in case. In this instance, you won't have to worry about this because you're looking top down. But you never know when it could accidentally like clip through to the other side of the car. So you don't have to go crazy with that. And this black square is going to take up a little bit of that green, but the trimming can go both ways. So I am covering up a little bit, but this shape 135 is probably one of my favorite default decals because it's so versatile. Like, look at that. Perfect. Easy peasy. Now, what do I want to do with this part moving forward? Actually, I don't really hate that now, but I might want to extend this a little bit more forward. Yeah. All right. So I'm using this teal shader just to see where the vent is. And this is going to be an example of I don't want to ramp up the depth of a decal too much because, say, I only want it on the top of the wheel arch. If I... That's between you and your partner, Viking, if you so choose. Like, if I wanted something like this and I only wanted it on the top, but say, oh no, I have a clipping problem or something. If I ramp up the depth, I could experience it like way down there, and I don't want that. So you need to be careful sometimes. Aligning with camera is fine. I often use that more so if I'm aware that I want it to look a certain way from a certain angle. Because if I change it to align with surface, that gets it all wonky. You don't always want to do that. And it's okay if you try out a concept or a part of a design and it doesn't really end up working right. Like, I'm not totally happy with how this looks. That simple to fix it. But what if I let that stay? And since the hood's right here, I can be a little bit more fast and loose with how I model things here. But as a word of caution, this is another spot where you need to have the angle all the way up, because if you have a decal like around the lines where the hood and the body meet, sometimes you can see like around the lip of the edge, the black remains or something like that. All right, so I like this shape, but I want that angle to be a little bit more exaggerated. Yeah, I'd like that to be a little bit more aggressive. So, and if I ever have like, you know, say this decal here and like I need to switch to a better angle or just like back to the default angle, instead of doing add layer left and then I'm back here, what I'll often do is just switch views really quickly. that gets me back to a default view a lot faster, in my opinion. Especially if you get to a design where there's like hundreds and hundreds of decals or something like that, which I've had before, it's just faster. So I want to make this a little bit more aggressive. So all I need to worry about is that this line lines up with this one here. And I'm going to keep this decal white just so that I can still see that sliver of black in between. Because if I make it black, I'm going to have a hard time lining up exactly where it is. So that's why I prefer to keep, whenever I'm doing any like line work like this, I keep it white just so that I can verify that it's level. And it needs to be touching that point down there, just for congruency's sake. All right, how does this look? Ooh, I like that a lot better. That looks much better. What if I make it by surface? See, like minor change, but that can make the difference. At least if you're being all nitty-gritty and looking at it way up close, which you don't always have to do. So I like where this is going enough that I'm going to go ahead and switch this to the other side. Oops, forgot that one. What were these for? Ah, that's right. And what I'm doing here is just duplicate symmetrically. That means for shapes, that's what you usually want to do. For text, you want to do duplicate opposite so that the text doesn't get flipped around, but you'll see that in just a second. So now that we've got that going, I think I'm going to leave this green stopping right here. You know, watch me do all of this just for Zico to want something else. But anyways, let's see if it's going to stay a little skinnier through there. Let's see, what could I do? I could leave the hood black, or I could make the hood green. Ooh, let's check that out. Let's start messing with the hood a little bit. So what if I kind of continue this green theme through here? You got to be careful that it doesn't leak onto the sides, because it looks fine from the top, but then you look at it from the side, and the GCR can be a little tricky with these hood vents. Like if it's too far to the side, that just doesn't look great. So I try to line it up with that edge, and since we've got that angle up on the body, I'm going to try and mirror that as well here. Ooh, or we could do an offset. It is a little Bob Ross in a way of like, oh, it's a happy accident. A lot of my designs feature elements that I didn't intend in the first place, but end up looking better. Sometimes it just works out that way. Let's see how it looks on both sides. Not too bad, but it needs something in the middle. And also, two color cars, just like this, with like white decals are fine, but a tertiary color, just like you forgot. There's an extra? What do you mean, mortal? I don't know what that means. Either way. So that curve kind of offsets where the black is, but that's fine. What can we do with the geometry here that'll actually be congruent? Forgot the extra green patch on our Team 4 Dodge. Oh! Team 4 Dodge. Oh, the hypercar. I remember that. Whoops. My bad. In perpetuity. Oh, forgot to do the angle here. So let's see what kind of like central shapes could be good here. I'm not really going to use these, just because we seem to be going with like an angular theme. So these would be too rounded. They wouldn't really mesh well with the rest of the car. So I'm going to be looking for something more angled. Maybe we can reuse this. See how this would line up. Make it black. And flip it vertically around there. So that we get this nice harmony with the side of the car. And sometimes if you flip it vertically or horizontally, it will change which way makes the decal bigger. Like I'm having to make the decal smaller in this case by moving the right stick down to make it bigger because I flipped it. But anyways, it's getting a little bit more intricate here, but I'm not totally satisfied with that. In fact, I think I'm just going to continue the green all the way down there. Because that's not really working out how I wanted it to work out. God, this is a really bright color to work with. Let's see. Oh, there's a tough little vent there. Happy accidents, right? Actually, this would be way easier. I'm complicating things. If you can do a design in fewer decals, always do that. That makes life so much easier for you in the future. And in this case, the align with surface is what I want. It gives me a much straighter line, while still conforming right along that edge. Yeah, there we go. I like that. Just gonna go ahead and delete this one. All right, now we're cooking. Let's keep working on the front here. Let's see here. I'll show you a good example of the angle bit. So you see how it's kind of a jagged edge there? I'm not sure if it comes through well in the stream or not, but that's what I was talking about with like the lip of the hood or something. If you ramp up the angle, that covers that off nicely. But if you leave it, you can kind of get that like clipping effect, and that doesn't look too good. So if anything's near an edge, you always want to ramp it up, the angle. So I'll toy around and just continue this kind of line through here. See how that looks. Not too bad. But I don't really like how it's like wrapping under. So in this case, let's see. Sometimes these adjustments do different things depending on the location in the car. But for right now, it seems like I might just have to swallow that and fix it later if I really care about it that much. But for right now, it's going to stay. Okay, I kind of like how this shows off that angle there, that natural obtuse angle on the front of the grill. But yeah, I'm definitely going to have to fix this a bit later. So we've got a good green theme going through the top. And now let's try and work in those dashed lines that Zico liked. See, we could put them here. Create like almost a tooth effect. That's not too bad, yeah. Always remember that there are ways you can use the decals that create a pattern by what's not covered. That can be just as useful. I'm also thinking that these might be a little too vertical, just compared to like how angled this is. These might be a little too straight, so I'm going to angle them a little bit more. And then reduce the size just a bit so that it all fits between the door handle and the front quarter panel here. Yeah, that's much better. Yeah, I like how this is turning out. We can mirror that as well on the hood, but with black. See, how's that look? Not too bad. There we go, that lines up nicely. Push it back just a little bit. This might be a little too slanted. That's much better. Alright, yeah, I'd say that looks pretty good. That's a good starting theme, starting idea. Every now and then I'll pause between I forgot to mirror this onto the other one. Every now and then I'll pause between applying decals just to take a step back, see how things look. Another thing I like to do is just to go ahead and do the rear wing, because it's such a small part of the car. You can design it pretty quickly, and that will have a lot of influence over how the rest of the car looks and feels. So sometimes, not always, I do like to put a pattern on the rear wing. Oftentimes I'll just leave it as a solid color. Oftentimes I won't. But I'm feeling like putting a pattern on it this time. So none of these are especially really grabbing me. What's the wah? I think you hit enter a little too quickly. Try again. Let's look through here to see if any... The easiest way to clean up decals overlap on the sides. I assume you mean like on the end plates? Silent? Are we on the same page there? Yeah. So what he's talking about is, so say I have a sponsor here. I'm just going to put Fanatec here because it's a good placeholder. I don't like to use anything that's like too short or tall there. That fills up the rear wing nicely. So on the end plate, if I put, say like my logo here, and I make it white, I'm not even going to size it. Sometimes you can see it like clip through. I always take care of that with depth, because since this is a flat surface, and if you don't really change your starting perspective on the end plates, depth you can mess with a lot more than angle, because some cars do have shaped end plates that aren't completely flat like this one is, but that takes care of it as well. And you can do the same thing if you want a colored end plate as well. So if I wanted this to be green, you can do the exact same thing. Drop the depth all the way down, but you still have a little bit of that clipping. Amp it all the way up. For the most part, that gets you 99% of the way there. You may have to clean it up a little bit, but again, depends on the car. Some are more difficult than others. But since I want to put a little pattern there, I'm going to dig through my shapes here. Ooh, actually, I kind of like that. It's not too bad. I have another one that reminds me of that somewhere here. Let's see. Like I said, these are all the generic ones that sometimes I like, but I don't know if I have an immediate use for. They won't always see the light of day, but I try where I can. These are good if sometimes I like to make a one livery and then apply some like dirt effects to it if there's like an endurance race or something like that, just for a little flavor. Let's see, the circles would clash. No. Too many numbers. I need to get rid of these. It's not that one. Man, I hope I didn't lose it. Ah, there it is. Okay. I kind of like this gives me, I don't know if anybody ever watched Ben 10, but this color and this pattern reminds me a lot of a alien that he could turn into. So I guess I'll take some inspiration from that. And I'm going to try and line up those two lines in the middle, so it's nice and coherent, but I didn't want to mirror it exactly, like do a symmetric mirror. It seems like I might need to size it up just a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Might need a little bit more. I think that's the right size. Yeah, there we go. That's close enough. Okay, yeah, I like this direction. So I'm going to ramp the angle all the way up on it again so that it shows through on the back. If you don't do that, nothing on the back. But I like it to show. And I'm going to double check. Yeah, right. I don't like how it's hanging on the end plate. So you can do that exact same method to clean this up. Bring back the depth, up the angle. Bam, nice and clean. Attention to detail is what makes your designs stand out. Oops. See? Just like that. See, it's not on the right side, but I spotted that little line there. And you don't always need to amp up the angle either. As long as you're covering it off from the perspective that you saw it, good chance it's covered. So I want to add this kind of hieroglyphic patterning to this side too, to see if I can mesh it with the rest of the design. I may have gone too far. It might have been on, I think it was on the previous page. There it was. I could leave it white. I could leave it green. Let's see. That's not too bad. But I do have to keep in mind that I do need to place a number board somewhere, and I need to place a sponsor somewhere. Let's see, changing it to surface didn't really affect that much. I don't hate it there. But what about the roof? This is the advantage of the GTR, since the roof is isolated. The longest I've spent making a livery? Days. Back whenever I still mostly did liveries. That's actually how I got my start in Gran Turismo. I didn't really drive. Before I joined ALR, I didn't do online races. I only did the single player races just to unlock cars and tracks. My main way I played this game was making liveries. So whenever that was my only thing, and I didn't have to worry about grinding for Monday races to not get relegated down to a tier below me, I could spend hours and hours and hours and hours on liveries. And if it doesn't really get to a place where you like it, it's totally fine to step away, go do, the rest of life, come back. Because you never know when you might have a moment where you see something, or like on Instagram, I'm like, oh, there's a GT3 car that I just saw on Le Mans Instagram that I really liked. I kind of want to use this shape they used. So it's perfectly fine to take some time away, but I've spent a long time making liveries before. But now I'd say my average time spent designing is maybe, if I'm starting from scratch like this, it really depends on how quickly the design makes itself apparent. Could be 1 hour, could be 3-4 hours. I say makes itself apparent because I have stepping away does help a lot. But I have a philosophy where the design is already there. It's just I'm discovering it. I'm helping it flesh out. Now I'm going to, on my laptop beside me, pull up my Gran Turismo page and find the old GTR I made for him, because it was using the same colors, and I want to use some white, but I feel like I remember him not wanting as much white as there was. I think I remember him wanting a lot more green than I initially had the first time around. Okay, so it does have a little bit of white, but not a ton. Okay, that's a good amount, and I think I used some gray as well. This is such a bright green, it's kind of hard to get any other color that would work well with it. Before I really get too deep into another color design, I'll start with a basic decal, like I think this one would be fine. Just so I can see it. Ooh, that actually, you know what? I like this. I am going to keep this, but I might make it a different color. This is what I mean. Happy accident. I did not intend this, but look at that. That fits perfectly. I didn't even have to skew it or anything. Money. Love that. But what if I want it to be a different color? What about a gray? That's too dark of a gray. Green is one of those colors, especially this green, that it's just really hard to pair another color with it. Green and pink is a good color combination. Ask my wife. So many of our things in our house are green and pink. This pink's a little too bright. Good color theory knowledge is also always Never a bad thing. What if it's a little bit more blue? No, I don't like that. Yeah, it is. A lot of them are, you get lucky that, oh, this actually turned out really nicely. I like how this spontaneously happened. Not really feeling the purple there, but I have had a thought. I'm going to make the car gray instead. So the easiest way to do that is to adjust the HSV. That stands for hue, saturation, value. Hue changes the color. Saturation changes how much of that color it is. Value changes how dark that color is. So lately, I've been really enjoying this like battleship gray kind of color. Like a nice flat gray, but like it's a little bit more silver almost, but it's not super light. Or I could explore the other side of this, go a little bit brighter. That's not too bad. But I think I like it a little darker. See, let's make it, yeah, right around there. And then I want this, well, now I have to go back and change all these. So get very good. See, I can do this pretty quickly by now, but you have to get very good at swapping colors very quickly whenever you suddenly change your mind. But you like the shape of something, but you want the colors to be a little bit different. I developed some pretty good muscle memory for this whenever I made the what am I thinking of? The Nations Cup stuff. The first time around, whenever I made like the 164 designs, because they were all the same shapes, but I just changed the colors. So I got very quick at changing the colors. Actually, I might want to keep the, yeah, I'm going to keep the rear wing black. Is Livery for the World Champ? Yes, it is. Also, if no one noted, if you didn't hear about this, Zico did win a world championship in a FIFA equivalent game. Shout out Zico. My goat. So I wanted this little angle here to be beneath the, like, let's see this, like Porsche line here. Just so that I can change its color and it's not overlapping at all. Yeah, I like that actually. Yeah, I'm going to keep the roof and tail. That's what will stare out the most. That's a good point. Thank you, Viking. The only tricky part about the GTR's tail is this bit. I don't like how the other low section extends up there. And those ridges there, for, I guess, aerodynamic purposes, kind of make it a little bit difficult to really put anything there. So there's always features on a car that you just need to work around. It's just a matter of time. Getting a feel for it. Now what if I made this white? Ooh! Ooh, I do like that. What if I made that white, and then I'm going to move this dashed line down here beneath it too, and then what if I make that black? It's adding some good layering. What if it's white? No. Green. This is the part where I would ask my wife what she thinks. It's always good to have a second opinion. That's not too bad. It's more of a texturing. Yeah, the whole car. The Citroen, there are certain cars that I hate working on. The Citroen, I hate. The Renault, I hate. BRZ isn't fun. Toyota FT1, not fun. I won't do the Suzuki just because I think it's ugly. I've never driven the Suzuki. I don't know if I've ever even bought it. If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything, and that car is a piece of shit. Yeah, I like how that looks. Just one last check. Yeah, if I leave it black, that leaves me a little bit more freedom to maybe put some text there on the green or on the white. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. Duplicate this one. Scoops on the... Yes. The side scoops, or the hood scoops. Those are a pain. I'm going to leave these, though. I like that. I don't care if BX drives the Suzuki. I think it's the most ugly Group 3 car on the grid. Not even close. It looks like if you asked a child to draw a car that was also a Batman villain. In a bad way. Let's see, so now I've kind of pigeonholed myself into more just angular shapes or dashed lines here, but we can still work with that. Not the worst thing in the world. What if he picks it for esports? Worse than... the VW VGT is... It's at least a little better. It's not great, but it's better than the Suzuki. They're both... I think they're both convertibles. I'm not totally sure. I'm pretty sure they are, though. Maybe we can replace those gray ones. Nah, that's not going to work. I think the hood is actually pretty well developed for where it is. I might add something in the middle. Sometimes the best course of action is just sticking with the preset decals. You can do a lot with them. Like I said, that the swoop shape here, 135, I use that all the time. All the freaking time. On designs you would not expect it to be on. But it's a very common guest appearance. So I'm going to move it over to the side here just to make sure it lines up. I'm not going to keep it here, but I want to make sure it lines up with these dashes so that it's at least parallel all the way over here. I'm going to do a symmetric flip. So now we've got a nice little center spot there. I could extend this all the way down, but I'm not totally sure if I want to do that. I'm not even totally sure if I want to keep this. I could make it black. Oh, I saw a comment. How do I do the McLaren? The McLaren is a tough one as well. Any car that has that like really aggressive side pod scoop kind of design, like the Renault and the McLaren are both like that. Those are typically on the more difficult side. Oh wait, no, all right, I got it. It's gonna be black. Change that to black too. Then have this pattern here. Sometimes this is the best course of action you can take if you have like the GTR, like these vents are a little tough sometimes as far as like, you know, I would want to put maybe a different shape there that's just not a straight line, but because of the slots, I think slats is the right word. It can be a little bit difficult to just not put a straight line. Like if you look at the white GTR design that's just by default, the one from the Gran Turismo movie, they literally just have a white or a red line, like a skinny red line, because frankly, that's sometimes just the best you can do. Now I think I'm gonna... that one's not too bad. And again, if whoever I'm making this for, I send it to them after hours of work and they're like, actually, I don't like this. Please do this, this, and this differently. Don't be offended. What program do you use to make custom decals? I don't really make custom decals. I make the best with the ones that I can find. So I'm an engineer by trade. I'm an aerospace engineer. And there's this theory in calculus. It's called like the left-hand rectangle rule, or the left rectangle rule, or the right rectangle rule. And it's how you integrate the space under a curve whenever you're still learning what an integral is. And an integral is just the amount of space under a an arc or a line between it and the axis. So if you just add a really high amount of rectangles, eventually you'll get a curve. And you add more and more and more and more and more and more until it eventually is a curve. And it's not, you don't see those jagged lines. So I do that sometimes with a rectangle here. Like if, say, on a car, like the hood space went all the way down to the front. And for whatever reason, the angling kind of resulted in something like this, where it's like it's not perfectly congruent. If I look at it from above, this can be kind of a curved line, so that might be a little bit difficult. Like, look at it from like there, that's a curve. But if I line it up so that it's straight, you can pretty much make it work. And if it doesn't quite get you all the way there, just add more rectangles or that 135 arc that I was talking about until it fits the line. And for the most part, unless someone looks at it up close with a magnifying glass, they're not going to see it. It's just for congruency's sake. All right, we're going in a nice little direction here. Or, ooh, I think I'm going to flip it. I am going to flip it. Yeah. At least the curve. Yeah, all right, this is going to take a sec, but we're going to get through it. Like I said, be quick with color changes. So everything that was black is now going to be green, and everything that was green is now going to be black. Yeah, that gives us much more green to work with. And we still get this nice little kind of hieroglyphic design going on. And the black and gray can kind of be a little bit more of a subtle offset color to each other, with the green being the more lively pops of spice. This though, I really don't like making really colorful, like bright rear wings, because it makes it very like visually heavy in that area. Like if I make this whole thing green and like do what I said and just flip the colors, now I'm kind of putting myself in a hard position where I need to find, actually I might just leave that black. Yeah. You put yourself in a very difficult position of like, what can I possibly put on this rear wing that would look good? Like it can't be a white decal. Just gonna use this one. That's not legible. But, you know, black wouldn't work either. So you have to find one, at least in this specific case, if I were to do this, you have to find one with like an outline. So I'm gonna use this one. Like that. Which that doesn't look terrible, but again, it's very visually heavy on the green running in the back. And that's just personal taste, that's personal preference. Red? You sabotage me. No, I'm not making it red. Red would be a little bit too much, personally. I'm actually thinking I may have been going in the right direction. Of course you're messing with me. I would not assume that you wouldn't be messing with me. I can count on you for that. So I think I might keep that black. But yeah, I'm not totally happy with how the hood looked, actually. I think it was better the other way. How would that look? Would the gray still come out okay? It's not too bad. But I'm going to keep it black. just to be consistent with the roof. So then I'll make these. Great, actually, that doesn't look too terrible. Gonna have to fix that bit in the front though. Ooh, all right. See, and now we might have a little like pattern coming through here, where the gray and the black meet at like these right angles here to kind of form like a checkerboard pattern almost. What if I do that? What if I just get rid of it? That could be a good spot for a sponsor. Whenever I'm unsure about something, never delete it, just hide it. You can always go back and delete it later. Yeah, actually, I think I like that. That works with the dash. And then I can go do this. Let me make sure there wasn't a dash in here immediately that was the one I used that Zico particularly liked. Because sometimes I'll do that. Because you do run out of space in your favorites folders. And if I don't feel like making another folder, I will just stick it in here. Alright. I'm not going to stretch much further than that, but I'll see this gradient one. Let's see how this turns out. Ooh. I kind of like that. What about if I make it... So if it's minute changes, it's really personal preference. I'm kind of going for like a almost a tiger aesthetic here. But we'd have to angle that black bit a little bit more. Yeah, you see how like the angle here on the leading edge of like the skinniest black part isn't the same angle here, it's actually the wrong direction. So I could flip it vertically. Does that help much? Does that make it look better? Or does that make it look better? I think that's the way to go. So as always, up the limit angle. I want to drop it below. No, I can't do that. Okay, I'm just going to have to be careful. Go ahead and get rid of these. See, like, just if you can barely tell, it's overlapping with some of the green there. So there might be a few places where I can sacrifice overlapping with some green. I can change its scaling so that it's just a little bit more even. Let's see, how's that look? That's not too bad. There. I don't think anything's too egregiously covered up. No, that's good. I don't fully like that little green bit there, so I'm going to cover that up. Much better. I also don't like this leftover gray. Yeah, like I said, if you're doing this on a car where the base color is a metallic or a special color, you can't do stuff like that. So there are limitations that you'll run into. This might be, I hope this isn't too busy. I'm worried it might be close to being too busy. See if there's something else I can work out here. Yeah, paint color decals. Whenever anybody has asked me about like what a GT7 wish list would be for like an update or a GT8 wish list, paint color decals. How hard is that? Or a like negative erase decal that just any below it, like you can set it. I've even thought about working up like an in-game render of what that feature could potentially look like, of just like delete X amount of decals directly below this. So if it overlaps with it, have it function as an eraser, like in Lightroom or Photoshop. But I don't think PD's ready for that kind of conversation. They won't return my calls. So I do like this checkerboard pattern. But we need to find a way to include green. Zico wants green. see, just for visual balance. Because I don't really need the white there, because I'll probably have a sponsor that takes up that spot. Like, and that's the other thing I've just noticed. This isn't perfectly level, so I might have to get a little creative with it. Because if I put a sponsor here, for example, let's say, what would be a good sponsor? Let me look at the title sponsors for this. Could do Remus, try to just keeping it broad just for something to fill up the space there. I used Ghost on his car last season. And never be afraid either to just like broadly search like sponsor. Sometimes you pick up one that was like an obvious one that you don't have. Adidas. I think Adidas would actually suit this well. Yeah. With the stripes. I hope Zico likes Adidas. And now that we have a direction, this could totally change the theme. Doesn't necessarily have to, but for example, now I'm considering maybe I can just include this shape here. Doesn't look too terrible. Maybe I want to size it down a little bit. I swear whatever song is playing sounds like it's from Animal Crossing and it's a classical music. I don't know what it is. That one's not fully working out, but I think we're going in the right direction there. See, like if I leave the sponsor white, I actually really like how this looks. Yeah, I'm going to keep it like this. You always have to be careful with words as well, because this word isn't symmetric. So if I duplicate it symmetrically, oops, it's backwards. So I flip it horizontally, and sometimes you have to be careful if a taller letter, like say D, was the first letter in a word. But say it fits fine on this side, but whenever I flip it around to the other side, sometimes you could see stuff like the D is like too tall, or like whatever T, F, whatever tall letter it is, might not fit the same way on the other side, so you have to kind of cater it to whatever the limiting side is. In this case, they're both fine. So I don't need this, what's now green, I don't need that to be white anymore, because now the Adidas is filling up that role of white coverage there. Adding a little bit of a tertiary color. Actually, a fourth color, not tertiary. But now that we've got the idea of Adidas as our sponsor, I'm not totally feeling this like digital design anymore. But I am feeling maybe something a little asymmetric. Too much green. We'll come back to the roof. Ooh, I also had an idea we could do this. Let's see, where is my gradient dash? This will work. We can do something like this. Make sure it's sized right. I'd say that's fine. Then we're gonna flip it vertically. And then horizontally. Alright, now it's a little bit too dominant over how much of the wing it covers up. Those are about the same size. Ooh, yeah, actually, I like that. And gonna have to move these down under here so that they're trimmed properly. Ooh, missed a spot. can't cover it from that angle. I'd say that looks okay. Yeah. And then I'll put a nice long named sponsor here. So for that one, I always like Richard Mille, or Richard Mille. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's a watch brand. Fanatec is a good like long named sponsor I use often. Certain sponsors only fit in certain places. So I think I am going to go with Mr. Richard. Yeah, look at that. Perfect. Might want to slim it down just a little bit. Yeah. Ooh, that looks nice. Continuing with the gray here. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's good. Gotta do something with this. Not happy with this area right now. We could do like another kind of quarter design. So I'm going to make sure that this angle here is lined up level. At least it's as straight as a line as I can possibly make it. So that whenever I just do the apply by camera, it's pretty much a straight line. That's really common to see on the GTR as far as shape-wise, just because that's a very prominent line. I think that works. Take a sip of water. Anybody else have any questions so far? I'm just now realizing this is a much more calm and laid-back kind of stream than what typically goes on in ALR with pyros screeching. So I hope you're enjoying the bit of brevity. Oh, that's way better. There we go. Now we're cooking with peanut oil. And, ooh, there we go. I have an idea. I'm going to duplicate because I want this exactly in the same space. I do not want it to be the exact same color. I swear I just made that green. There we go. I want it to be a little bit... actually, no, I don't. I want it to be shorter this way. How did that turn out? What if I make it the other direction? I think it looks better like that if I'm going to do it at all. I think we hold off on it for now. Oops, I gotta fix that. Now that the digital pattern is gone, I can make these a little bit more well-spaced, well-shaped. What I could do is, let's see, make this as straight as possible. That's not too terrible. And then I could swap this gray on the front. Let's see, where did I put it? What if this is green? Oh, there we go. I think that works better, actually. Yeah, I like that. So we seem to be developing kind of dash theme here, which, you know, was intended. Yeah. He's going to want a lot more green than this, though, if my memory serves me right. And sometimes big sponsors like this are good tools for something like that, or you never know how it may turn out beneficially to use a big logo as a design element itself. That's not that bad, actually. Would it be a little bit smaller so it doesn't creep up onto the top? I think I like that. Yep, I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to add some more texturing down here, and I'm going to leave this bottom part black. I'm not really going to mess with this. This is going to be a good spot for just generic sponsors. So now is where we start adding some complexity, now that we have a theme going. So I'm going to flip these just so that they're the same running direction as the ones above. And ooh, we've got a nice convenient natural line there, right with the door. Very convenient. Leaving, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and put it. I'm leaving space for the number board. I don't know if anybody's watched Wicked. The first one was much better. Don't waste your time on the second one. I didn't tell Ross that I would use this live stream as a platform to spout my beliefs, but I'm going to do so. Wicked is overhyped. Oh, this is a good opportunity for a lot of black and green. So again, here's a good use of this one. Thin it out. Expand it a little bit. Lengthen it. Now we've got something that more or less really kind of fits this curve here. I may... Actually, I think it'd be easier if I just did this. Doesn't always work. I just like to use it. Trust the vision here. This is going to look a little wonky at first. See what I mean? That's frustrating. That's gross. I'm going to up the angle. That's more or less fine. I'll trim it off in the back there later. Might bump it up just a little bit so it's not so aggressive. Yeah, that's better. And then right on the side. See, does that cover off? It does, yes. Zico's gonna love this. Look at all this green. I don't know why he likes this color so much. Zico, if you ever watch this, this is not an easy color to work with. See, I think it should be down here. Yes? I think that's right. Yeah, I'm gonna have to trim that up a little bit more though. So I am overriding these like trimming spots I used, I believe. Is this where? Yeah, but that doesn't matter. Ideas change. People change. There's always a way to fix it if something like that happens. Don't be afraid of too many decals. It does not make the car slower. Another happy little accident there. I'm going to keep that triangle. I like that. This is an example of me using that kind of rotation method. So I'm using two rectangles to kind of get a curved shape there. It's very difficult to see from that angle, but there are other instances where it's a little bit more visible. Let's see, what would line that right there? Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna have to, let's see, what does that fall under? Yeah, okay. I don't like how this little extra line comes in, so here's where the handy dandy 135 is gonna help us out. I'm gonna make it a little bit longer, but then shrink its size so that the arc fits. And you can use multiple of these if it doesn't want to cooperate the first time, or the first try. We're getting pretty close with this one, though. There we go. And this pace is normally a little slower than I would actually go, just because I'm talking to you guys. How can I fix this? I don't think I want to fully cover this off. You know what, here, let's do this. Yeah, I think that was the right move. At least the right starting direction. Okay, yeah, that's good. I don't like how that like cusps there though. So again, handy dandy. Yeah, look at that. I like that. And the fine tuning stuff, if your hands are twitchy, I have very twitchy hands personally, so sometimes I'll try to like just move it just a little bit and then I'll like massively rotate it. That happens. Be patient. Now we've got this big black section on the back there. What can I do with this to clean it up a little bit? I know. It's an easy line there. I'm noticing some clipping. There, that's better. I think I'm just going to go ahead and finish it off right at that line. Yeah, there you go. And just like that, a really complex shape like the trunk is colored individually. That turned out actually pretty lucky. I like that. I have a feeling he might ask me for this Adidas leaf to be green. Just a hunch. Yeah, I think he'd want that. Know your audience. Might add a little bit more line work here for some texturing. We could add in a new element, something like this. Asymmetrical black and green. What do you mean by that? Which sides? Are you talking about like this part, or the leaves? Adidas logos. Let's see how that looks. Always open to suggestions. I see the vision. I think it would work out better if the entire car was asymmetric, or at least like color swapped. What we could do is do some texturing work. So I just duplicated the leaf, and the one below it I set to black. So I'm going to offset it like this, so it looks like it's got a bit of a shadow. It's not too bad. And then what if I'm going to duplicate it one more time, and then use a white shadow for like a bit of a highlight. This might be a little difficult to pull off at this angle. Not digging the white. I like the black though. Might make it a little bit more dramatic. Increase its size a little bit. That's not too bad. It being a line with surface decal, it's making it a little bit difficult to work with or get like the exact shadow that I want. Because this top left leaf isn't really getting much on the top side. So what if I can't do that because then that skews the whole thing. I think I might just accept it how it is. Yeah, I think I'm just going to do that. Leave it that way. Here's another good opportunity for a sponsor. At the end of the day, cars, like race liveries, are just rolling billboards. So keep in mind that your sponsors need to be visible. If it is too busy, too much going on, it doesn't look realistic, in my opinion. There are ways you can do it and like pull it off well. Like if you have an underlying pattern or something like that, like Iggy's Vipers for the Daytona race, they had like an underlying like kind of fluid or like spray. No, I remember it was like a spray paint kind of texture, and it was a similar color to the base color. And if you put a white logo or something like that on top of it, it can still work. Or if you do one like this with the outline, it can work. Actually, I think that would be a good one. Let's see, what did I use? I used Modal, right? Yeah, I did on my Daytona design myself, just to see how this would look with a black square. Yep. Fully agree, JMS. I think a white only text there would look better. What can we whip up here? Maybe Boss. I haven't done Boss in a while. No, Boss would conflict with Adidas. Those are both clothing sponsors. I try to not double dip into two different of the similar category. So since I'm doing Adidas as my sponsor, you're not going to see Under Armour, Nike, any other like Puma, I won't add those because that would make sense for a sponsor theme. Because why would Adidas pay for a car and then allow Puma to also get recognition on the same car? That just doesn't make sense. So I typically try not to double dip. And this also sounds straightforward, but since I'm not using OZ wheels, don't use OZ sponsors. What would fit well there? Maybe Mobile 1. Ooh, yeah, I like that. Similar font to Adidas, actually. I could do that. I could. I don't feel like it, though. That's too big, though. One thing that comes with experience is decal sizing. You want it to be big enough to be legible, but not so big that it fills up the entire space. Like, I'm not going to make it this big. That's too big. Because then that draws too much attention to it, and then that starts to change the shape. Because then the Adidas and the Mobile One logos kind of blend together, and now there's like this, at a quick glance, white rectangle followed by another smaller white rectangle. So we might want to make that a little bit smaller. So you gotta be careful. People are brutal about it, JMS. That might even still be a little too big. Could use a little bit of a rotation too. That doesn't look fully level for some reason. Yeah, I like that better. There we go. And it could use a little bit more green down here too. Let's see. I used to use this decal. Where is it? I used to use this one all the time. Just play with it until it finds its home, until it finds a good space that feels like it works there. Nah, no, never mind. That looked like trash. Let's finish the back. The back is more incomplete than the front. See, how would that look? Not too bad. I like that. Then finish it off. Very good. Ooh, I have an idea. This will be great. Right here. You want to see my ass? Yeah. So this is a good spot for a decal of some kind. So we're going to put these here. And maybe have a little logo. Let's see. You know what? This would be a good spot for a aeroleagueracing.com logo. Actually, those are in my items. So I have a few here. This is where I put all my driver numbers. I make them myself. There's a website I use. It's like a Google font path. Just download some font files, upload it, get your own font. These are the number fonts I always use. Let's see here. That's way too small. A little bigger would be fine. Then I have to reduce this size. I might just nix that. Yeah, that's not going to work. Yeah, that looks fine there. If I raise it a little bit. Ah, shit. Alright. Twitchy fingers, like I said. I think that suits that part well. Yeah, backslash. That's funny. Back needs some green, though. Doesn't have enough green. Honestly, what could I do here though? Maybe, ooh, yep, that'd work. Then we tuck it under here. And then make sure that's a nice sharp angle so we get a nice little bit of texturing there. I feel like this might look better if I do it align to surface. What if it's a little bit... Nah, it needs to go all the way up to the top. And be a little thicker. Perfect. In line with the... Ooh! I see what you're saying. So like... kind of like this. That's more Adidas-y. That's definitely more Adidas-y. Adidas-ish. Yeah, that's way better. And then, I'm going to have to do the same thing here, though, just for my sanity. But here's the hard part. I'm pretty sure I used some gray decals to trim all this. Yeah, I did. So my options are either turn those decals gray or turn those decals green. Or, yeah, because it's... Okay, those are going to have to be green. That can work, though. That can work. All right, let's see which ones need changing. Where is it? All right, it's there. So I'm going to add layer above. Let me get this wonky texturing. Great, got to increase the depth even more. And of course, this is going to require more trimming. More trimming, and I'm going to have to re-angle that first green bit I placed. Yeah, fiddling about. Let's see, so I need to move. Yeah. Where's this one? All right, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. It's covered up by everything anyways. Trimming, trimming, trimming. That is where most of the design time is spent. Bellissimo. That mostly looks straight. Occasionally you get lucky and you get it right the first try. That's almost never the case, but sometimes you get lucky. Yeah, that's the other thing. If you are new to livery design, there are a few cars that, for whatever reason, the 3D like laser scan that PD did of the car in reality, not symmetric. Don't know why. Kind of a big oversight in my opinion, but yeah, that happens. And I think we're almost done with all the patterning, and then all that would be left would be filling it out with sponsors, and that adds a lot to its shape as well. Like this Adidas takes up a lot of space. The logo back there takes up a lot of space, so we'll see some of that. I would really like this to go all the way. Duplicate that. Use the one on the bottom. have to drop this all the way down though. And double up on this one too, damn. Alright, yep, here's where it gets tricky. I'd say, yeah, that's fine. That'll do. And to take care of this, we're going to flip it. Yeah, I think we're heading in the right direction here. I think we're almost done. Here's where we're just going to have to use perspective. Yeah, this is that rectangle thing I was talking about. Sometimes you just got to use a lot of rectangles to create the illusion of a curve. A little trimming. And this needs to be a little thinner. Some clipping issues here. There we go. We're going to clean up the back. Yeah, everything that I'm doing right now is just the nitty-gritty cleanup details. Take a step back. Just needs a little bit more green on the front somewhere, and I think it's good. And then it's sponsor time. After I add the green on the front, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the stream, and then I will add the sponsors a little bit after. And post the final product in the livery channel, so be on the lookout for that. Here we go. I think we're going to try this shape again. Damn, that's not straight. All right, so if you try to do something like that where you want to line up a specific decal, it's helpful to find the decal you want it to be aligned with. Let's see, I think it's these. Yeah. All right. Now that I've clicked on it, I'm back in line with its view. Go all the way up to the top again. Now it should be a little bit better aligned. Not necessarily with this line on the car itself, but with this line of the decal. That matters more, especially with black, because black can really change how a car is, it looks like it's shaped. And I'm sure this is going to look bad if I do this. Yep. Some finishing touches. Yeah, often better to just do it that way. I think that's fine. I might add a little bit more green here and there, but as far as the base design goes, this is a good saving point. So I'll just call this Adidas green. Did he go win the title? No, he didn't. So this will be 115. I feel like this is a good stopping point. I will post the final. I might make a few more edits here or there, but more or less this is my process. So thank you guys for sticking around to the end if you are still around. If the demand for these is good, I can do more, or maybe post a document about some tips and tricks and that kind of thing. But thank you guys for hanging around. We'll see you next one.